Introduced as an attempt at producing a vessel capable of carrying a large marine contingent for use in boarding actions, planetary assaults, and special forces operations, roles which existing Starfleet ship classes had proven to be rather ineffective in due to their emphasis on scientific research and ranged combat, the Chandley Class frigate was a large ship which saw service in Starfleet during the mid-23rd century. The class would never achieve widespread service or significant construction, but the few ships which were built were well liked by their crews and proved very popular and useful where they did see deployment outside the Federation core regions. The Chandley was 315 meters long, 262 meters wide, and 90 meters tall, with a crew of 360. Of which over 200 were combat personnel in the form of the ship's marine contingent. The class had a maximum speed of warp factor 8 with a cruising speed of warp factor 6. The Chandley was armed impressively for its size, making it a tough opponent for anything but the toughest of potential enemy cruisers it was likely to encounter, mounting 6 twin phaser banks and 2 single, as well as an impressive torpedo battery, which was mounted fore and aft, which consisted of several tubes in their attached magazines for high, for the time, rates of fire. Once Starfleet was able to go on the offensive in the final year of the 4 Years' War, they found their logistic line to be badly suited to the capturing of damaged Klingon vessels following battles, or the rapid seizure of Klingon outposts and installations following a victory. With existing cruiser classes carrying only small numbers of shipboard security personnel totally unfit for these missions. This forced Starfleet tacticians to either wait for assault ships to be brought from the rear to conduct these missions, or else integrate them more directly into their formations, both options presenting major issues. For starters, assault ships were slow, which made waiting for their arrival from the rear a time-consuming process which affected their rate of operations, and would slow down any force which included them more directly into their line. They were also poorly armed, necessitating that a major escort force be assigned to keep them safe, and making it virtually suicidal for them to be kept in a combat formation for any length of time. Further complicating these issues was the fact that typical assault ships were very few in number and carried troop complements far beyond that needed for simple boarding actions and the taking of small communications and logistics installations. Several years after the war, in 2247, Starfleet conducted the Strategic Forces Survey, which closely examined the course of the war and made recommendations about ways to go about improving the performance of the fleet in any future conflict. It would be from this survey that the Constitution, Federation, Hermes, Saladin, Archer, and Ptolemy classes would all spring from, in the years following the submission of the report resulting from the survey. One of the ships suggested by the survey board was a vessel possessing cruiser or frigate-level fighting power, with speed sufficient to keep pace with fleet units, which could embark a large contingent of Marines to permit formations which were assigned such a ship to more easily board damaged enemy vessels and conduct assaults on smaller enemy bases, with the potential for their use in the conducting of special forces and intelligence-gathering missions behind enemy lines. While the board's report would prove to have some weight within Starfleet, with many of their proposals going on to see implementation, their suggestion of building a troop-focused unit would meet with little support initially, with many pointing out that such a vessel would have very limited utility outside of another large-scale conflict, which found Starfleet on the offensive, taking much territory, and would likely be very expensive compared to the ships with similar capabilities otherwise, taking away resources from these vessels which could be seen to have a more valuable role in Federation security in most other circumstances. But, as the hot peace with the Klingon Empire grew in intensity during the latter half of the 2250s, and new threats emerged such as the Gorn and re-emerging Romulan Star Empire, Starfleet would reconsider the utility of such a ship and approve construction of a small run of vessels of the class to prove the concept. Planning for such a ship would begin in 2264, with construction beginning midway through the next year, with the prototype beginning her trials in late 2265. USS Chandley entered service in 2266, being deployed initially to the Klingon frontier, where she undertook an extensive series of tests to see exactly how effective she would be in her chosen role. The ship next being deployed to the Orion sector to combat piracy and smuggling which plagued the region. In this mission, the ship would prove to be wildly effective, using her strong armament and marine complement to quickly become the terror of the syndicates. In a 6-month period, the vessel being responsible for the capture of over 40 vessels engaged in criminal activity in Orion space. This feat would be repeated as Chandley's sister ships entered service over the coming years, each successive member of the class serving briefly along the Klingon border before being dispatched once fully worked up for operations against the rapidly diminishing illicit trade in the Orion sector. So successful would the Chandleys be in this role that by 2278, virtually all pirate and prominent smuggling activity had been brought to a virtual halt in Federation space, with the syndicates being forced to operate in a greatly diminished role largely in the shadows, and more carefully concealing their activities from relevant authorities. These actions would give the ships significant acclaim in Starfleet, leading to some officers to begin clamoring for more ships which expanded on their success in anti-piracy to become the ideal law enforcement vessels. These suggestions would never make it beyond the suggestion phase, however, for one simple reason. The Chandley Class existed, and had already removed the majority of the reason for such a ship to exist. In fact, with the syndicates all but destroyed, the Chandley Class had reached the high point of their careers, as there was very little else in the law enforcement role which would not be far below their abilities, and which could not be handled by more conventional law enforcement cutters. Nor were the ships seen as particularly useful with the fleet along the Federation's borders, as most situations where the ships might have proved to be useful were served just as well by conventional cruisers and frigates, their maritime complements seldom being found to have much utility. As the late 2270s turned into the 2280s, it seemed that the Chandleys had reached a point where they were largely unnecessary in the fleet. In 2283 even, several members of the class would be placed into reserve, with the decision for their future pending by Starfleet Command. Various proposals being put in the meantime, which would have seen the ships refit to Constitution II level standards, re-rolled as fast freighters or transports, redesigned to serve as fleet command and communications ships, tankers, and many other roles. This situation would last until 2285, when Starfleet intelligence got a hold of the ships as part of the still largely classified Operation Chameleon, which saw the Chandleys heavily refit to make them ideal for operations with special forces and intelligence gathering missions. Approval for these refits being granted as a direct result of the rapidly escalating tensions with the Klingon and Romulan empires, which seemed to be slowly drifting towards an inevitable war between the Federation and her powerful neighbors. While the exact missions that these ships performed is not known to us, and there's no point in spouting rumors about their missions, we can be fairly certain that a part of their refit included an experimental Federation-designed and built cloaking device, which allowed them to better undertake their clandestine assignments behind enemy lines. In this new role, the Chandleys would last in service until the early 2310s, when the well-worn ships would be retired from service, initially placed into reserve in the event that their upgraded capabilities ever became useful again. But this would end in the 2350s when the hulls were finally scrapped by Starfleet with little fanfare. Although something of a disappointment in their initial flawed mission role, the Chandley Class would find a series of niches which it was well equipped to serve in Starfleet during the latter years of the 23rd century, and proved to be well liked by their crews even if the ship itself never gained much widespread popularity in Starfleet. Nonetheless, the interesting role that these ships played in the history of the period cannot be ignored, nor can it be overstated. The class had a flawed conception, but proves that where there's a will, there's a way. And that even if Starfleet engineers are stuck with something of a lemon of design, 23rd century Starfleet engineers were geniuses with making do and making something useful. Hence the Chandley Class. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to give it a like. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and you've somehow made it this far in. Also, huge thanks to the channel's Patreons. There's a link somewhere down below should you want to support the channel like that. I might start saying thanks to Patreons before videos, maybe, I don't know. But for the moment, I'm going to stick it back here and say, thanks so much to Patreons. You help out the show on occasion when I need things somewhat quickly, like new microphones or new quality USB cables to connect the perfectly functioning microphone, but the USB cable broke, as happened the other day. So it's appreciated. Thank you very much. I think that's really all I have to say for the moment, other than this class is somewhat obscure. I like it, but I think it looks very, very weird. I mean, that's really it. Yeah, so have a good one.